Hey, welcome back. Today I'm going to review my ownership experience with the 1998 Mercedes-Benz SL600. This is a bit of a tough review to make. I have my pictures, my video coverage of the car during my ownership years, and frankly I had to just recheck some of the specs of the vehicle so that I give you some accurate information here, because it's been a while since I've actually sold the vehicle, and I will say regretfully so. So what is the Mercedes SL600? For many years, Mercedes made a Roadster. Was really the top of the line car for Mercedes over a period of several years, I think since 1960 or 1973. And so they just kind of like evolved the car over the years. They've always been very beautiful, mostly offered with a 6-cylinder V6 or V8. The iteration of the R129, which refers to this vehicle here, added a whopping V12, 389 horsepower, 420 pound-foot of torque engine inside a small Roadster. But interestingly enough, the Roadster, even though it was a top-down car, weighed a crazy 4,500 pounds, and a two-seater Roadster. The SL600, which was the coupe version of that car, and I wouldn't even say that's a coupe version, because there was quite a few differences between the two cars, but the coupe version was even heavier than the Roadster, which is usually the reverse that you see, because there's usually more bracing and whatnot built into a Roadster in order to keep it more stable at high speed, so it usually ends up being heavier. In this case, they made the Roadster lighter than the coupe, which is a bit of a departure from what you're used to generally seeing. Now, a bit of a backstory on this particular car. I owned, and let me just bring up some pictures so I'll know what I'm talking through here. I will post these pictures. Okay, so let me tell you a story of how I acquired the car. I used to go to the auction in Richmond, British Columbia. I used to kick around there, a couple of days every month, maybe a few days every month, and take a look at some of the stock they had. I had never really bought a car. Actually, I had bought one car at auction up to that point. It was actually an Audi A3 2.0 turbo with very low mileage, and I got it for a couple $1,000, so I couldn't resist. Drove it for a while. It was kind of just one of those cars that you would drive around the city. I sold it pretty quick. Someone made me an offer. I made a profit on it, so that was kind of cool. Now, with the SL600, I was at the auction one day, and I saw this black Roadster. Roof was up, and I walked over, and there was quite a bit of attention being given to the car, and I decided, well, this is kind of a cool car. So I got in, I sat down. There was a couple of foibles, some interior wear and tear, not a whole lot, but just a little bit. And I wasn't really familiar with the car. I wasn't familiar exactly what it was. I mean, I knew the SLs, obviously, but the SL600 was a different kind of beast, which I hadn't seen a whole lot of them, and I don't think I've really experienced ever really being in one or driving one for sure in my lifetime. So, I looked at the car, I sat down, I started it up, the engine ran very well. There was a set of aftermarket wheels on the car that looked very attractive. But on top of that, the owner who was auctioning this car off at this auction house basically left the 4 original, I guess it was the gold package Mercedes V12. And so there was these ugly rims, like honeycomb rims with gold inserts. And he had those inside the car, packed into that small car, believe it or not. And I thought, when this runs through the line, I'll just put in a lowball offer and see if I can just scrape this up, and maybe it'll break the next day, maybe it'll just go downhill really fast and it would just be money thrown away. So I wasn't willing to spend a lot on this car. I wasn't willing to bid high, do anything crazy where I'd end up with this kind of like, you know, car with a lot of hidden secrets and so on. You know, I bought the full warranty through the auction. Obviously, that's a spoiler. So the car comes rolling through the auction house and through the runway, and I said, okay, $3,000. And then this other guy goes 3.2, and I go, okay, 3,500, and the guy goes 3,700, and I thought, okay, the top I'm gonna go is 4,000. That's it, game over. So I said, okay, 4,000. And then the auctioneer was like, you know, speaking the way they do, and he was like, going once, going twice. Is there any more bids? 45, 45, 4,500. Nobody said a word, and I was like, oh shit, what did I do? What did I do? Anyways, gone, sold. So I just bought myself a 1998 SL600 V12 Roadster at an auction for 4,000 Canadian dollars. Now, what's really magical about that particular transaction is I completed it that day. I drove it home same day, and it drove perfectly. It drove beautifully. Got it home, took the wheels out, stored them in the closet, as you can see here. And you know, I cleaned it up. I had it detailed. I had some of the leather upholstery stitched up at a place in Richmond that does it pretty economically. There was very little I had to do with the car, and frankly, it was a gem. This car was the best value car I have ever bought in my entire life, bar none. Here I had a Mercedes at new, $175,000 car, only 20 years previously, for $4,000, 4,000 bucks. This car, low kilometers, only had 80,000 kilometers. That's about what, 50,000 miles? Anyway, I ended up with a gem, so I got lucky. But I started driving the car. I took it from Vancouver to Kelowna in the summer, roof down. It had a lot. It had the hardtop. It had the sway bar that pops up in the course of an accident. It had the windshield, or I should say the wind deflector in the back. Everything was electronic. Along with the roll bar, you could actually deploy it up or down. The car was an absolute gem. It was just an amazing car to drive. It was fast. It was torque. I mean, 420 pound-feet of torque on a rather heavy small roadster is no joke. Particularly, you know, coming from a V12 engine, very smooth, very nice. What did I love about the car? It grew on me. You know, I thought it was kind of a blocky, not so attractive car, but frankly, I thought it was quite beautiful after a few months of owning it. I'd park it, I'd polish it up, keep it in really clean condition, as you can see by these pictures. You know, when you look at it from the rear hind quarters, it looks really nice. This 1998 was after sort of a mid-cycle refresh. They had upgraded quite a few exterior components on the car, along with some interior components. One of my favorite features was the built-in cell phone on the dash. That's pretty wild. Frankly, I mean, looking at it from the side, it looked great. Kind of a timeless design because it's sort of slab-sided, very basic. Other upgrades that the 98 had was went up to a 5-speed automatic transmission, which was much more reliable than the previous transmission. It also had LED, or I should say HID lights, so the lighting for the car was all upgraded as well, so it looked a little bit more modern. You know, and then you take a look at the car, you know, from any angle after you've owned it for a little while. At least from my perspective, I thought it was an incredibly beautiful car. I would drive it sometimes with all the windows down, everything down, as you can see in this photo, and it looked really sleek, really beautiful. Sometimes I'd just put the roll bar up, sometimes I'd have the windscreen deployed, sometimes I wouldn't. And I remember driving around in the Okanagan in the middle of summer. I mean, here we are. I mean, I'm in Rio de Janeiro, that's where I live now, and it's hot here. but the Okanagan can get pretty hot too. So, you know, I'd be driving around 38, 40 degree weather, top down, obviously getting sunburnt up here. But man, that air conditioning belted it out. I mean, everything on this car just worked so well. No oil leaks, no transmission problems, no shifting problems. Like, everything on it, all the electronics, everything worked really, really well. I did nothing to the car. And because they made so few of them that year, 1998 SL600s, I was able to put a collector plate on it and only pay $290 per year for insurance. But be careful with those collector plates, because if you get caught driving to work and you crash the car, they will not cover you. It's for pleasure only, and you got to pretty much prove that if you have any incidents as far as accidents are concerned. Just a little sidebar there, legally. Now, the car was comfortable. One of the flaws on this particular car was the seat belt didn't work really well. It wasn't very comfortable. Tightened up quite a bit, and I couldn't really loosen it so much. And the only other problem I had with the car was that the passenger side seat had a tear in the center seam, which I said earlier in the video I had it stitched up, and you know, I paid a couple $100. So all in, this car cost me about $4,500. With the insurance on top, would have been about $4,780 just to get the whole car up to snuff, up and running, all the lights, everything worked on it. I had to do very minimal work, nothing really, except for pour a lot of gasoline in it, because with a heavy foot, this thing gets about 12 to 15 miles per gallon. I mean, a V12 lugging around a 4,500 pound car, you know, what else would you expect? And so the end of the story is this. I took it to a car show, the German Car Festival in North Vancouver, which happens every summer, except for the last couple of summers due to COVID-19. And there was an older gentleman who really liked the car. And this has happened to me a couple of times at the car festivals and going to car shows, is I get offers. You know, I remember selling my BMW 635 CSI, 5-speed manual, blue on blue, tacky leather material. I ended up selling that at an auction, or sorry, not an auction, but at a car show, because you know, I bought it really inexpensively for about $6,000, I think, if I remember right, and I sold it for about 15. So I don't know, I guess everything's for sale, you know, and it forces me to move on and get other cars, so it's not such a big deal. I really love that 635 CSI though, and I'm gonna do a full review on that car as well. I've got a lot of footage of that. And anyway, so the end of the story comes here. Someone just offered me a price on this car that I couldn't refuse, and it was close to 20,000 Canadian dollars. Now remember, I had just paid about 4,000, some taxes and insurance, you know, definitely under $5,000. And within a year, you know, I mean, someone walks up and says, hey, you know, I got close to 20 grand, I'll give you the car, I'll do it today, you know, type of thing. And I went home and I had to really think on it, and I thought, geez, yeah, I want to get a BMW 650i convertible. It was kind of on my mind a little bit, so the guy caught me at the right time. I sold the car for about 18 grand, and I noticed now they're being advertised for a lot more than that. But I have no regrets, because I got, you know, Mercedes-Benz Halo car from 1998. It was a great experience. It was the third V12 car I've owned, and this V12 is a whopping V12. This thing is powerful and smooth. Actually, too smooth. It didn't even sound like a, you know, it was very you know, very sane sounding when you're on the accelerator. And I was on the accelerator a lot. Man, I tell you, on the Coquihalla Highway, I had that thing up to speeds. Well, I don't think the RCMP can get me down here in Rio de Janeiro, but I could say I was way over 200 kilometers an hour, bombing along in the Coquihalla, like car totally sturdy, steady, glued to the road. This car was phenomenal. I'd say it's one of the regrets. I should do a list of the cars that I regret and the ones that I don't regret, and some that I'm indifferent with. I've had about 20 European cars, so I'm just trying to get through them all like one by one, you know, one at a time. I make some other videos about other topics, as you'll see in the channel here. So I'm not a YouTuber per se, but I enjoy you know, getting on the camera here and talking about cars and some other topics. And if you're interested, you know, go ahead and subscribe. I'm not going to be one of those guys that, hey, subscribe, smash that bell. I hate those guys. Anyway, if you're interested, I have about 9 cars left to review, and I know I'm not really getting to these very quickly. Forgive me. There's a lot of work that goes into these videos, having to edit them and get the pictures and the overlays of some of the video and so on and so forth that goes into these videos. So forgive me if I'm not belting these out quick enough, but that's it. That's all I have to say about the Mercedes SL600 1998 model. By the way, one last point is that that was before Chrysler Daimler made the marriage. So it was just before Chrysler started putting all their cheap ass shitty parts on Mercedes cars. So this was the car. This was the car to have. And I blew it. Oh well. Live well.